Hello YouTube. Happy Easter for 2022. I thought I'd come and check out the Alstonville Plateau, which is the home of so many beautiful macadamia farms in the Northern Rivers, just to see how that area was going after all the rains and everything. And they've had some storms and everything that have taken limbs off trees, but in general it actually looks okay. And while it's as wet as, well, nearly as wet as that Rosebank area that I hail from, it's not doing too badly. I've just stopped by a random farm on the side of Dalwood Road, and looking at a distance at the crop, it looks quite similar to mine. Some of you may be wondering how Garth's farm is going. The Garth who does the Australian Macadamia channel. He's no longer doing these videos, but I did have a drive-by since I was in the area, and what I could see from the ute, he's having a very, very good year, and good luck to him. Happy Easter, Garth, if you're watching. Anyway, the inspiration for this video, as a few of my videos lately, has come from a mate, Bruce Chester, who's very popular on the Macadamia show. He's always put me in the box of being a scientific macadamia farmer, where he's always sort of been more in the sort of the hippie side of it, and he's been known from time to time to drive up and down the rows playing music to his trees. And all this unseasonal weather made me stop and think at this Easter, what if trees could think? What if trees could actually think? Now, it's a ridiculous question. Trees don't have brains or anything like that, but it's we certainly know from just macadamia farming experience that if you do certain things to macadamia trees, they'll respond in certain ways. And within that, you can drill down and go to individual varieties that will behave differently when they have different stimulus applied. So certainly in the genetic coding, and there is a lot of it. I've been reminded that trees have much more DNA material than humans do. And it's always surprising to people to see, we like to think of ourselves as complex beings, but in fact, mammals don't have all that much DNA. These trees have heaps and heaps of it. Even a common rice plant has more DNA than humans. Now, why is that? Well, it can be how plants reproduce by cross-pollination, possibly. There's a theory that trees, being slow-breeding creatures, keep their junk DNA, what we call junk DNA, but who knows if it's actually junk. We know, however, that there is a lot of genetic programming in macadamia trees because of, again, these behavioural things, and also, how different ones behave from each other within the same species. So what on earth would they be thinking this year? With all that rain happening, we've had 2.3 metres of rain so far in Rosebank, and that is more than last year's rain, and that was a wet year. So in 3 months we had more than a whole wet year. Well, one thing we do know is that rain generally gives trees a hormonal signal to drop their nuts. They think, if they think, it's the best time for them to drop the nuts because the nuts will fall on nice wet ground. There's a better chance of germination, and the tree can get a nice start happening in the cooler months of the year. And then when it gets dry the next spring, well, the tree will be well on its way, nourished by what the tree puts into the husk, which is very nutritious food for a baby macadamia tree. That's great, but this year we had all those initial rains in February, and everyone was scared that the nuts would drop. And for the most part, they didn't. It wasn't until the more recent rains that the trees said, okay, let's let go the nuts now and drop them. Why? Well, perhaps because it's traditionally the more, normal autumn harvest period, or perhaps they hadn't ripened enough. We don't know, but it's not as simple as it's raining, let's drop the nuts. We know that. A couple of years ago, the 2019 to 2020 harvest, all the agronomists had the theory that it was so dry, that there was so little rain, that the trees would react by dropping their nuts and saving themselves, basically aborting their crop. And that was the widespread fear. But that didn't happen either. What happened in the end was that the trees hung on to their nuts, and they did the absolute best they could by, compromising a little bit on the shell, making thinner shells, but they put everything they could into the kernels that they produced, and the trees stressed themselves out in order to get a crop on. And in fact, it was a bumper year for many farmers. What happened after that, though, was that even the trees that had been well fed, a lot of them took a holiday the following year to either recoup some internal stores of energy, or we don't know quite what's going on here. Now, one of the reasons I stopped at this particular orchard, I could see from the road that these were 344s. I'm getting better at spotting which they are, but I had a little cheat to help me, and that is this. Have a look at this. It's April, and these 344s are flowering, and it's happening apparently all over the northern rivers. The 344s, which are very, very easily thrown off their game by conditions, have just taken the view that after all this rain stopped briefly, they've put out new flowers thinking that it's spring. Now, last year as well, in a wet year, we had flowering in the 344s in June, but not April. I don't see how flowering in April can ever turn into nuts, although some of the flowering in June did turn into nuts this particular year in the 344s. So what is this tree thinking? Well, it's got it wrong. It's flowering at the wrong time of year. We can only hope that it sort of gathers up a bit more energy and flowers in the right time of year so that we can get some crop off these things. What else do we know about some of these trees? Well, we know that if we cut them too hard, if we prune them too hard, they'll sense the wound, if you like. And in the case of these 344s and a lot of the old Hawaiians, they'll stop cropping. They'll put all their energy into getting back what was wounded, and basically the tree righting itself before it crops again. And that's how that tree responds. There's a couple of other varieties like the A varieties where you can cut the tree and it both flowers and fruits the following year. I'm referring there to the older ones, the A4s and the A16s. The newer ones, completely untried and tested because none of them have really reached pruning height yet. And I'm not entirely convinced that the A38 or the A268 behave the same way as the other A's when pruned either. So we know that happens. Now, this particular orchard here of 344s is almost certainly one where the middle used to contain another row of trees. Why? Because we know that the trees up here have climbed very, very high, probably in an effort to outcompete for light. But what we also know is that when the middle row was removed, the tree has now grown back into the centre, and you can see, if you've got a big enough screen, that there's flowering, there's fruiting all the way down the side of the trees, which is what makes them efficient. When it's only at the top, you're not going to get very much crop out of these trees, but when you can get them to fruit up and down the sides, that is a bonus. And so when they removed every second row of this orchard, they eventually did get back the production. And I think they've done that without pruning. They've just gone row removal, and they've kept the tree at a fairly strong height. We do know that when they do get the space, the trees would rather grow out than up, so maybe they won't get much taller, or maybe they do need a bit of pruning down the track. But these processes, these decisions that people take, are all us guessing how a tree thinks or how a tree responds to these stimuli. And we are still learning, and that's the joy of this industry. We're still absolutely learning what to do. And we're now entering a period where, for example, nitrogen fertilizers have gone up in such enormous amounts all over the world that we're going to have to find other ways to make these trees happy and well fed. I think Australia's in a very good position because we have those advanced cattle and chicken industries that some other countries, or most other macadamia growing countries, don't have, so that we can use manure-based fertilisers to keep the trees happy. That's no news to the likes of Bruce Chester and Peter Fraser, who you've seen on the Macadamia Show. They've been manure-based for a while now, and they get amazing performance out of their trees. That's what I'm moving to. And hopefully I'll be able to get some on before winter, because I want my trees to make some decent flowers. Not just these ones, the 344s are making out of season. So there's all sorts of challenges, but if you think of a macadamia tree almost as being a thinking being, it's probably not bad discipline for a farmer, because you have to, if you like, put yourself in a macadamia tree's shoes, ask what it likes, try and give it what it likes, but to the point where, you know, its decision making leads to providing you with a crop. So that's my little Easter update. Sorry to get all deep and meaningful on you, but what do you think, guys? I mean, we know we can think, so put your thoughts in the comments down below, and let us know what you reckon about macadamia trees. Do they have an almost thought process, or is it just a simple matter of DNA programming? Thanks for watching. See you soon.